Could Airbnb be a potential catalyst for home prices to crash because of foreclosures and distressed people in the Airbnb sector? And could it also contribute to rental prices coming down as well? Well, all the data that is coming out of Airbnb is not saying good things about what's going on for hosts in Canada who bought at incredibly high bubble prices in 2021 and 2022. So let's get right into it. So first of all, I want to go over this story, which is really, really interesting. I got it off one of the many groups that I'm part of on Facebook. So this person says, looking for inputs and ideas if you may. We started an STR 1 year back. That means short-term rental. Just after the peak season, we learned this is not what we want to do long-term, and it is not as financially rewarding as we initially calculated. Now, it's really interesting that they noted that after the peak season, they said, oh, hold on a second, we're not making enough money. And the thing is, there's a lot of hidden costs with doing Airbnb as well. And I would highly encourage anybody who is considering doing short-term rentals to go to one of your local short-term rental meetups, because yes, there will be an active community that you can go to, meet these people and see what they say. And trust me, it's not as rosy as people picture it for short-term rentals. That for sure is going to come to a screeching halt with a recession. So it's kind of crazy what this person's saying. And then they go on to say, we listed the property for sale. The problem is it has been for sale for 4 months now and has no offers. I have to pay out of pocket every month to keep up with the mortgage and maintenance, and we have already reduced the price to a minimum. I'm kind of in a bind here. Any ideas / recommendations? And obviously the principal recommendation that I can make is, hey, you need to reduce the price more, because home prices are based at the margin. So if home prices in your local area are all lower, then guess what? That means that you need to reduce the price. You can't sell at last year's prices. That's the way it works in real estate. And the real estate market is incredibly illiquid compared to most financial markets as well. So what that means is prices can come down very quickly, and they can also move up quickly too, as we've seen in the past with Canadian home prices and the super bubble that we've had. So this person is saying that they are screwed essentially because they can't put it on Airbnb if they're having showings and whatnot. That's just not going to work for them. And obviously taking a long-term tenant isn't going to work either at this point if they're trying to sell the house. So they are completely screwed. Now just imagine that there's a recession, one of the people who bought that Airbnb loses their job. Most people are qualifying on dual income to get the mortgages for these Airbnbs. And you can see how the potential for a foreclosure crisis is there. But now let's dig into the data of what's going on in different cities across Canada and how the Airbnb market is faring, because it's very interesting. You're going to want to hear this. So let's get into it and start off with Calgary. So Calgary is an interesting case. So basically the occupancy and the revenue normally peak in July along with the average daily rate. So it's an easy one to look into here. You can see right now the daily rate is 110 and it was 151 in July. Then it kind of went off a cliff. It's recovered slightly, but it's gone nowhere near. And then if you go over to the occupancy rate, you can see that the occupancy rate is also less right now. And you can see that it was 84% was the peak last year in July as well. So the occupancy is also down. Revenue is down massively, 40%. So people are having to reduce the prices, and Airbnb has this smart pricing program, which I'll go into in the live Q&A, because you can actually work that program to your advantage if you're using Airbnb, get some really good deals. We did in Panama. So I'll tell you about that in the live Q&A. So make sure you tune in for that one in August. But you can see here, 40% decline in revenue. How is that going to hold up when your expenses have gone up? If you're in a variable rate mortgage, if you're in a fixed payment variable rate mortgage, your expenses have gone up massively. So now let's dig into some of the other cities and see what's going on there. But before we do, I first want to say this channel is now affiliated with ExpressVPN. We all need to have a VPN right now because, quite frankly, finally, with Bill C-11 and Bill C-18 and all these things moving to control what you watch, control what you see on the internet, you need to have a tunnel out of this country, and that's where a VPN comes in. So if you're interested, go to expressvpn.com/market mania. It helps out the channel if you end up buying a subscription, but everybody needs to have a VPN regardless of whether it's ExpressVPN or another provider. Let's get back to it. So Halifax, I want to talk about that. The average daily rate in Halifax is 135 right now, and you can see here it was 162 in the peak in August last year. They peaked out 100% occupancy in August last year, and they're at 72% right now. You can see the revenue right now. It was 3,000 last year. It's 1,800. It's down 40%, exactly like Calgary. And what is happening to the inventory? You've got the inventory that is going up. Despite all this, there is still speculation. People are still buying. People are still flipping long-term rentals to Airbnb. So this is not a good sign. I mean, if we weren't heading into a recession, already in a recession, in my opinion, then maybe this would be okay. But the fact is that we are heading into a dark, dark time in Canadian history. And you've got people just continuing to pile on the speculation. And if we go to Calgary as well, I can show you with the inventory growth there, it's exactly the same story. Once again, it's hit a new high in Calgary, just as it has in Halifax. So let's get over to Vancouver, some of the bigger markets. So you can see the average daily rate right now, 176. It was 223 last year in August, down substantially. Occupancy rate, 86% versus 97% last year, down. You can see the revenue, 2,896, down from 4,000, nearly 30%. It's down massively. So the revenue of these businesses is dropping massively. And it's at what point do they realize that this is not sustainable to do anymore? Things are in fact getting worse, and then they need to sell. And it's likely going to come all at the same time when there's fear and panic in the markets, which is likely going to come. So this Airbnb is just going to be a contributing thing to the housing market crash. But there's a heck of a lot of supply locked up in Airbnb. So, you know, if just a percentage, just 30% comes onto the market all at once, that will disrupt the market, the real estate market and the rental market. So you can see here, it's up in Vancouver as well. They've got 6,249 active rentals in Vancouver, and obviously the revenue is down. Now, if we go on to Toronto, revenue is down 28%. It's dropped from 2,850, it's around 2,000 this year. You can see the occupancy rate is around 70%, and it was 91% in August last year. People are paying around $169, and last year was the peak at $198. So clearly things are coming down and costs are being adjusted. Meanwhile, inflation is still going on. People's expenses are soaring right now. So this is a business model disaster that we can foresee with this data coming right now. So, you know, no matter what you hear on TikTok or any other of these crappy social media platforms where it's short-term content, essentially, you've got to be careful, because a lot of people got into Airbnb because it was pushed to them by big influencers who don't care about their audiences at all. So it's very, very interesting. You know, I just find it crazy that people are still getting into Airbnb. And we didn't actually go through the inventory, but look how much the inventory has gone up. You've literally seen a massive growth in Toronto. Since Q4, it's gone from 15,000 to 26,000. That is just unprecedented growth. And obviously, do you think some of that is the reason why home prices rose? Because this is just adding another layer of speculation. And because you can get more money potentially when the economy is good on Airbnb, that allows people to pay a higher price for the property, which is kind of just pushing the bubble further. So Airbnb is just another thing that has helped push the bubble even further. But Airbnb has never been seen in a recession, let alone an economic depression. So it is kind of crazy. And then last but not least, Montreal. So the average daily rate, 131. It peaked in June at 179. That was June this year. This is the only city across Canada that saw a peak this year for average daily rates. And I'm not sure if the Grand Prix was on in that month. I have no idea. But anyways, occupancy rate. You can see the occupancy rate is 68%. That has not peaked. Last year was still the peak, August, 87%. Revenue here is down substantially as well. You can see that it's down from $2,557 to $18 and $24. So it's down substantially, and it hasn't peaked again this year. So there is big problems for Airbnb. And you know, another thing that I want to show you is the data when it comes to licensing, because it's really interesting if you look at a city like Toronto, what's happening. And I want to kind of just give you this other thread to think about. Licenses, 73.5% of the short-term rentals in Toronto are unlicensed, okay? So that's 18,377 that are unlicensed. So that's a huge number that is unlicensed. Now, why are they unlicensed? They're actually unlicensed, not for the reason that you think. It's because they're actually trying to skirt around the rules and regulations, because essentially Toronto has some rules and regulations. If it's over 28 days, it's not classed as an STR, so you don't need to do all the red tape and things that they put in place for short-term rentals. And obviously this was put in place to help with rentals, essentially long-term rentals, but clearly it's not working, because when you look at what's going on in Toronto, you can see that everybody, when it comes to minimum nights that you can book on the platforms, they're all above 28 days. Most of the volume, most of the inventory is above 28 days. In fact, 77.2%, 19,318 are above 28 days. And you can probably guess that the ones down here are significantly more expensive because of the rules, because of the red tape. So it's interesting, but they're still seeing the revenue decline versus cities like Calgary, which I believe don't have the same regulations as places like Toronto. So it's interesting, you're still seeing this decline. And what's interesting about the 28 days or more is a lot of that is because of immigration. Would you believe it? It's pretty obvious why. I mean, when we came to Canada, we went into a VRBO, which is just another short-term rental, and we did for a couple of months, because you need to look for a rental, a long-term rental, establish yourself in Canada, get your bank account set up, and all the rest of it that you have to do when you arrive to a country. So obviously that creates massive demand for Airbnb. But as we know from the past, and as we know from sentiment right now, immigration, it's not going to be this high for much longer, guys. You don't have to put up with this ridiculous immigration for much longer, in my opinion. I don't think it's going to last, because public sentiment is changing. That's what affects political decisions a lot. And you are going to see the conservatives, probably, it looks likely, who are going to take power next year. And when they take power, the immigration rules that we see, hopefully they structure the system in a better way, where it's more in favor of skilled workers versus lower skilled workers and everything like that. But I think you're going to see the immigration numbers, they're going to start to come down. And that just compounds with a recession, because inevitably we are going to be in a recession, a depression. And again, you are going to see people who are not moving. That is what happens during a recession. You have people who aren't moving, who aren't emigrating to different countries, and that will slow. So that will put massive pressure on Airbnb as well, particularly in big cities that receive large numbers of immigrants like Toronto. So that's why I just wanted to mention what was going on there. And now I wanted to show you this, because, you know, as we know, the average person is being destroyed right now, and you can see that rents just continue to go up. So rents have just continued to rise. They've hit a new high now. And, you know, this is unsustainable, as you know, with the chart that I produce when it comes to real income growth. You know that people are being absolutely destroyed. So they're just paying more and more, 35% of their median income, in this case, towards rent. So that's after tax. Their 35% of their income is going towards rent. And then you've got everything else that goes on top of that. And that's just an average. That's just an average. That's a really bad average to have. I mean, typically they say 1/3. So you're over that. But you have to imagine that that is just a middle number. And a lot of them are 40, 50%, as we've been into before. Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, they're all well over 30%. 30%. And that's for a household. That's household income. If you're a single person, you have zero chances. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. And the country expects to attract skilled workers with this sort of setup. It's just kind of bizarre to me. But obviously, Airbnb could have a massive impact on the rental market. And not only that, a slowing real estate market could have a massive impact on rental prices as well. As people can't sell, they'll look to flip it to a long-term rental if they can, because sellers are emotional too, and they don't want to sell in a declining market. But many of them are going to be forced to sell in a declining market, and it's going to be very interesting going ahead. So anyway, if you're interested in a VPN, go to expressvpn.com/market mania. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed it, you might like this video here. You might also like that video there, which I picked out for you. I want to thank you so much. It's just an honor to be here, be able to do this, and to have you as a viewer. Thank